Hello, my name is Dr. Valerie, and I'll be teaching Physics 220, Section 903 of the lab. I'm looking forward to having a great semester with all of you and getting to meet you face-to-face soon. I thought I would start off by recording just a short video to walk through the syllabus this semester so you understand how the class will work. And if you have any questions, of course, bring them to me in the first day of class or send me an email, and we'll try to get them addressed and see what we can do. As you well know, we're in this odd situation of COVID, so we have to apply social distancing to our labs, which requires us to reduce the number of students that we can run at any one time. And so then means we're going to be doing the labs in two different formats, and that will be an online activities and face-to-face activities. And these will often run in parallel with each other, so it'll be important to keep track of what's going on with all the various dates. And I'll walk through that. I put a calendar in there that will hopefully help you understand what is due, when is due, and of course, if any questions come up, please let me know. So this is normally something we do and bore you out of your minds for the first day of class. So instead, I'll bore you in a video. Do please watch this video as it will walk you through and make sure that there's no misunderstandings between us or anything like that. I'll try to keep it as short as possible. All right, so I'm Professor Valerie. That's my name. My office, I will be in my office occasionally. We can't have students in our offices due to social distancing. And so that means almost everything we need to do is unfortunately via Zoom or when we're in lab meeting face-to-face with each other. That's my phone number. Again, I'm in and out of the office more these days than normal, like you might expect. So you can always leave a message there. I do get it through my email, and I can see that you called me, although often sending me an email will be the easiest way to get in contact with me. I'll have office hours 12:30 to 1:30 on Zoom. There's the link. That'll be a permanent link for the semester. Feel free to hop in to ask any questions you might have. And I'm happy to answer questions about lab, about the course itself. I'm your instructor. I'm here to help you learn physics. And so I think don't hesitate to ask me anything. Of course, I can do things by arrangement. I'm happy to meet with you online in the evenings most of the time. So, I think we can arrange for us to meet. For this part of the class, you will need a copy of the lab manual. If you haven't bought one, please do so. We tried to put in just the labs you need to keep the cost down. It's fairly inexpensive, and we don't make any profit of anything like that. All right, so I give a little bit of a blurb that I've already kind of said, what the lab is about and what we'll be doing this semester. So now we can go on to the various parts of it. Again, as I said, we will have two different types with this class. And again, I think when you see the schedule in a second, it'll make a little bit more sense. Excuse me. We have these online lab-like activities. We call them ULAs. You can, whenever you see the word ULA, think it's an online activity. I will open those up on Billboard on the Saturdays on a 2-week period. You'll have 2 weeks to work with them. So I'll open them up on a Saturday. You'll have 2 weeks, and they will be then due at 5 o'clock on the following Friday. So the way it'll work is they'll be available on Saturday. You'll have a week. The next weekend, you'll have another week, and then at 5 o'clock on that final Friday, they will be due. No late ULAs will be accepted. You have 2 weeks to work these. Please keep on track of them. Of course, it's better to do them earlier rather than later, although sometimes you may be waiting for the lecture content to catch up, and that's okay. Just remember that they will be due, and we will not take any late of these online activities. The other part of the course is the face-to-face labs. Those are found in the lab manuals. Please read the labs beforehand, but again, don't fill anything you're not supposed to. In other words, don't answer all the summary questions, because in principle you shouldn't be able to answer the summary questions. You need to do the lab. Don't fill any data, particularly if you've taken the class before or you have a student who took it the week before. Don't copy their data in. That is academic integrity violation, and we will treat it as such. So come in and only fill in the parts you're supposed to, which is namely the pre-lab. but that doesn't mean you shouldn't read through the lab, see if you have any questions when you're walking in. And again, questions can be on the theoretical background of the lab, can be on the lab itself. I will try to keep my little spiel at the beginning of labs to a minimum. Although if there are questions, I will gladly answer them. But I will pretty much just kind of give you some tips to do the lab and we'll move on. But if anything doesn't make any sense to you, you should certainly ask it at that point. So there are kind of 3 parts to the lab, 3 phases: before, during, and after. So before lab, again, read the lab, understand how it works, see if you have any questions, complete the pre-labs. I will, at the beginning of class, I'll go around and sign the pre-labs. If they're not done at that point, you'll get no points for it. That's -2 out of 10 for the lab. I will then ask you just to staple the pre-labs to the lab itself, and I will collect it and look at them when you turn them in. And we'll talk about turning them in a second. Note that when I grade the pre-labs, I'm grading you on being a thoughtful attempt. I'm not necessarily grading you on being right or wrong. And part of the reason you're in the lab is to learn something. So maybe you don't understand something, but I do want you to make sure that you're kind of putting a thoughtful attempt into it. It's okay to be wrong. What's important then is when you're done with the lab is to reflect on that and see, well, why were you thinking you're wrong, and why should you not think that anymore, so that you're thinking correctly. So don't hesitate to be wrong, but do be thoughtful. Also, and this is true for the labs itself, make sure you do all the work and explain answers when required. And explain answers is not two words. It's usually not an explanation. An explanation means trying to be thoughtful and explain what's going on. If you're in doubt, explain. Okay, you would rather be explaining than not explaining. Now, I will say, when I sign them off, that doesn't mean you're automatically going to get 2 points. It just means that you're going to be available to get those 2 points. I will still look at them, and if I feel like you aren't doing sufficient work, I will, of course, take some points off for the pre-lab. So during lab, when you're in lab, you'll be working. You will be working alone, but that doesn't mean you can't talk to your classmates. Just ask that you do it in a socially distanced and a safe way. In principle, you have 3 hours to do this lab. You should be able to actually finish the whole lab, including the summary questions, while you're there. As you'll see in a second, we're not going to necessarily require that, but I would strongly encourage that you do that. At the bare minimum, when you're in lab, you should make sure that you get all of your data and do all of your calculations to make sure everything's working correctly. You won't be able to come back in if you're missing data. Or if you forgot to record the length of something, or the mask that you were supposed to hang, or the spring constant, or whatever it is, you can't go back and get that data. And if all you do is you take the data and you try to get out of the room as quickly as possible, then you could very well end up missing it. So you should work through all of the calculations and make sure that you have all of the answers. And then I really would encourage you to also do the summary questions. Primarily because, hey, you might as well get out of the way while you have the time, but also that's going to be the easiest time for you to ask questions. And so let's go to after lab, and then I'll tie that a little bit more. So again, we're not going to actually require you to finish in lab. We understand working alone can take a little bit longer. And so we are allowing you to turn the lab in 48 hours after the end of lab. It's actually a bit more than that, as you'll see in a second. So our labs are on Tuesday. The work will be due by 5 o'clock on Thursday. If you miss that, again, I won't necessarily check and remind you. It's up to you to make sure that you're doing that. I will take the lab up until Friday, 5 o'clock at a 50% penalty, and after that, I will not take any late labs. So this is where it becomes important for you, I think, to try and answer the summary questions while you're there, rather than just try to get in and out as quickly as possible. There's only 48 hours between when you're done and when you have to turn it in. If you kind of hit a summary question and you're stuck and you're not sure what to do and you would want to talk it over, that's going to be very difficult for us to do. I do have my office hours on Wednesday, but really answering these questions through email is very, very difficult. And I do say that it can take me up to 24 hours to answer my email. And so if the lab is doing 5 hours and you're stuck and you email me, if I see it, I will try to do what I can, but I can't guarantee that you're going to get an answer in a timely manner that way. So in a sense, I'm saying it's much easier that when you're with me and we're talking to each other, that we take that opportunity to make sure you have any questions. But again, if you don't get done, let's say the experiment doesn't go quite as well as you would like, and you have to take some more time taking data, I'll encourage you to at least look over the summary questions, make sure they kind of make sense to you, even if you can't answer them, and try to clear up anything that might be difficult. So I don't want that to make it sound like I don't want to work with you. I'm just saying that with only 48 hours, it can be very difficult for us to connect with each other if you really have a kind of a substantial misconception. Both the ULAs and the labs themselves will be turned online, be turned in on Blackboard. They must be submitted in PDF format. It's really hard to work with Word documents in Blackboard. My biggest recommendation is that you use Office Lens from Microsoft. It's a very nice program for making PDFs. It's free. It deskews. It does all sorts of nice things. And it gives nice compatible formats. We do find that if you use some of the truly kind of off-name PDF generators in your cell phones, that you end up with a lot of difficulties doing that. In terms of the ULAs, it's often best, you can, of course, type your work into the Word document. I will submit it as a Word document, not as a PDF. You can submit your work into there, and then you can generate a PDF from Word. You can even generate graphs if you like and insert them. It all works pretty well. Again, if you're having any trouble, of course, if you really are stuck and you don't have a printer with an ULA, go ahead and just write it out on a piece of paper. Please make sure that it's clear what you're answering. So make sure you're numbering things carefully, and turn those in. So that's kind of how it works. Again, you'll see a schedule in a second. I think it'll maybe it'll make real sense when you see how that schedule works. Okay. Some other information. So further down in the document, we talk about social distancing. We'll talk more about what the process is when you come into lab, but basically you'll come in, you'll wash your hands. We have a alcohol solution. You'll spray your station down. We'll talk while that dries, and then you'll be able to begin your lab. And then when you're done, before you leave, you spray the station again, wash your hands, and leave. And again, make sure that you're always wearing your mask. If you remove your mask, I will ask you to leave. Students at Grand Valley have been fabulous about this. I really appreciated it, so I know it won't be a problem. And again, you can talk to other students in your class. I encourage you to talk to those students in your class, but we'll definitely do our best to maintain a 6-foot distance at all times. Occasionally, I'll have to get a little bit closer. I do try to minimize that time I get closer to you, and just to make sure that we don't, none of us get this disease. All right. If you need to miss a lab, please review the attendance procedures. I'll go through those in a second. You must schedule any missed lab within 2 weeks of the missed date. So if you miss a lab for COVID, you'll have a process for doing it. It can be done via email. You do the email, you schedule your makeup. The makeup itself doesn't have to be completed within 2 weeks. You must schedule it within 2 weeks, however. And so you can do that. We will be dropping one lab, either an in-person or ULA this semester. But I would strongly encourage you to plan on doing all the labs, both for score, right? I mean, it's best to drop your lowest score as opposed to just skipping a lab and making it an automatic 0. In particular, I would very much encourage you not to say, well, I could drop a lab in week 2 and not come, and then skip, and then in week 8 suddenly realize you need to drop a lab, and you can't go back and make up that lab that you missed earlier. So if you miss a lab, schedule it, do the makeup. It's best to do all the labs. They are certainly going to help support your learning in class. Again, as I said, feel free to email me any questions you have. Please put Physics 220-903 lab in the subject line. That makes it a little bit easier for me to find emails, and if I have to search my email, I can search for that and it comes up very quickly, just in case I happen to have missed it. Again, it may take me up to 24 hours to get to an email. So if it's an urgent question, or if you're going to be missing lab, email me. Please don't stress. We have a record of that. I will get back to you, but don't panic. That if you've emailed me that say you failed your assessments and you can't come to class, I will now have a record of it, even if I don't get back to you right away. So I'll do my best to be shorter than that, but I do get a lot of emails, and sometimes I'm just working my way through them. So if anything comes up, please let me know. Anything. If you're having a problem, if you're struggling with the course, if you're struggling with the lab, if life is just going hard, I'm here to help you out, okay? So please don't hesitate to talk to me. And again, if you fail a COVID assessment, let me know as quickly as possible. We'll work on getting you scheduled for a makeup. So here's the schedule. And again, like I said, hopefully this will make a little bit work. So this week, and I'll send this in an announcement as well, we don't have an in-person lab. There will be an online activity. It's uploaded by the time you see this video. So you can go ahead and work that video. It's due Friday at 5 o'clock. I will be online during our lab time starting at 11. I'll give you an hour from 10 to 11 to kind of work, and then I'll hop online from 11 to 1 and see if you have any questions. After that, we'll start to meet face-to-face, and as you can see, we pretty much meet face-to-face throughout the semester. In week 8, that's the mental health break, which I'm sure we're all going to need at that point. It's going to be a long semester. Fun one, but long. And so we won't have either ULAs or lab that week. You can see that I have you broken up into 2 groups, A and B. Blackboard will tell you which group you're in. And it's just Group A meets the first week of a 2-week period, and Group B meets the second week. So you can see our first lab is graphing 1D motion. And as we're graphing 1D motion, Group A will meet on 126, and their lab will be due on 128 at 5 o'clock. Group B will meet on 2-2, and their lab will be due at 2-4 at 5 o'clock. Now, when submitting work to Blackboard, I can't set separate dates for the 2 groups. So the due date will always be that for Group B. If you're in Group A, don't assume because it says the due date is 2-4 that is your due date. You must submit by 128 at 5 o'clock. So please don't miss that due date if you have it. There'll be no online activity in weeks 2, and then we get rolling into it. So you can see now the face-to-face labs will just alter that. Again, pay attention to the schedule as to when the lab, when you meet the lab, which of course is always on a Tuesday, and when the lab is due. Now you can see with ULAs, so other than our first one here, we get 2 weeks off, and then we'll come in, and so the free fall ULA will open up on February 6th at 10 o'clock. That's a Saturday. And you can see that it will be due on Friday the 19th at 5 o'clock p.m. And then the next one will open up the next day on Saturday at 10 o'clock, and so on and so on. So you have 2 weeks to work these ULAs. Again, plenty of time to ask me questions. You can ask me questions in class. You can come to office hours. You can send an email, and we'll try to schedule a time for us to meet. And then we just go through, and then we have 14 weeks in the semester, and then we will be done on the 23rd will be the last thing due. There's one slight exception to this for Group A. You'll see on week 11 I have a star by it. That star is your lab will not be due on Thursday at 5 o'clock. It will instead, which is the 1st, it will be due on Friday the 2nd at 5 o'clock. And that's because the 1st is the second of our mental health break days, and I did want to force you to turn something in that day. If you turn it in that day, great. But if not, you do have until Friday. That's the only Friday exception you have. So don't confuse that with the rest of them, all right? All right, so here's just some general text. A lot of this reiterates what I said in my own words. Some stuff about notes. Again, here is the lab makeup policy. I want to be very clear about this. Please read this. And again, it's 2 weeks. You can see how much is bolded and underlined. So we're pretty serious about this. The person you contact is Dr. Jeff Lenters. There's his email. I'll move it up more to the top of the page. So you email him. Make sure that you either CC or include me on the message so that I know. And then Dr. Lenters will take it from there about a makeup. He'll determine whether a makeup is warranted, and if it is, he'll then send you to Timothy Evans, who will actually do the scheduling of the lab. If you're in Group A, actually my lab is full, so you would not be able to come to my second week lab. So there will be some alternative time that we will have to schedule for you to make up the lab. And then again, there's just the general schedule in terms of weeks. I have a more detailed one above, but the second part of this is the official lab syllabus. So again, Dr. Valerie, I am looking so much forward to working with you all this semester, and I know we're going to have a great semester despite the circumstances. We just have to work together, be flexible, and make sure that everything goes well. So I'll see you face to face on the following week, Group A, and the week after that, Group B. But I will still have my office hours, and again, I'll be online tomorrow.